Residential flood insurance pricing, that's what we're talking about today. Not only are we going to talk about the national average, we're going to talk about how pricing is built, how it's different from private companies. So let's get started. Hello, my name's Chris Green, president and owner of the Flood Insurance Guru, and more than 12 years ago, I bought a house in a flood zone. Had a terrible experience with it, and I've been helping people solve this problem for the last 12 years. Today we're talking about pricing. The one thing everybody wants to know, particularly we're talking about residential flood insurance pricing, like on a house like this right here. How is that pricing built? Well, there's a lot of different things now that are used in pricing. Traditionally flood zones were used. Not so much anymore. Now they're looking at things like the replacement cost of this property, the actual cost to replace this thing if it's completely destroyed. We're looking at flood frequency, the type of flooding, like is it a river? Is it flash flooding? Is it coastal? Elevation of the property above what's called the base flood elevation. This is the level that the federal government thinks flooding could come to. All these are going into a pool to determine your flood insurance rate. Now, you're determined differently with the federal government, which is using the factors I'm telling you about, compared to private flood insurance as well, who's also using those factors. But private flood insurance has more flexibility. You may get a $400 quote from one private company, and you may get a $4,000 quote from another one, all depending on what risk they're willing to take on. Now, what kind of pricing should you be looking at? Well, what we can tell you is what the national average we're seeing on the residential side in 2024 is, and that is right around $1,000 a year on average for about $250,000 in coverage. Now, that may not be enough coverage for you. It isn't in most situations. That's the most coverage the government offers through their program on residential building, but that is a good average to have. Now, you heard us mention flood zones. The federal government does not use these anymore, but some private companies still do. So don't get hung up too much on a flood zone, because that could actually have little to do on your pricing. And what could have a big thing to do in your pricing is something called a flood risk score. If you haven't done it already, you can click here on this page and go find the flood risk details for your property. And a flood risk score from 0 to 100 on the chances of your property actually flooding are going to come up. This is going to give you a good indication. If this score is above, say, a 50, if your flood insurance premiums are going to be on the higher side, or if they're going to be on the lower side, it's going to tell you how close you are to water. These are all things that contribute to pricing on residential buildings. So I hope that this video helps explain residential pricing to you. Now remember, if you're ready to take the next steps to get in a residential flood insurance quote, just click here on this page and we can start that process for you in less than 2 minutes. Thank you.